Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae. Thanks so much for following along with us this afternoon. Today marks the end of the Karen Read trial in Dedham, Massachusetts, ending with a mistrial. The judge today got a second note from this jury. Earlier today, the judge had to read what's called an Allen charge to the jury after they said that they were deadlocked, that they had tried very hard, but that they were deeply divided, that they had convictions that could not be moved. She sent them in again, and they, for around 3.5 hours, deliberated through the afternoon. Then this note.
Judge Cannone, despite our rigorous efforts, we continue to find ourselves at an impasse. Our perspectives on the evidence are starkly divided. Some members of the jury firmly believe that the evidence surpasses the burden of proof, establishing the elements of the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Conversely, others find the evidence fails to meet this standard and does not sufficiently establish the necessary elements of the charges. The deep division is not due to a lack of effort or diligence, but rather a sincere adherence to our individual principles and moral convictions. To continue to deliberate would be futile and only serve to force us to compromise these deeply held beliefs. I'm not going to do that to you folks. Your service is complete. I'm declaring a mistrial in this case. I'll be in to see you privately in a few minutes. So thank you so much for your service.
And with that, the defendant left the courtroom, as she has each and every day, because she has been out on bond. Her attorneys addressed the media, no doubt celebrating that the jury was not able to reach a conviction in this case. Our Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson was there for it all, inside of this courthouse and outside. Now joining us, Matt, I know we had an issue with your signal earlier, but you were sharing just the mood outside as people learned that this was going to perhaps be a mistrial. What are you seeing both then and now?
Right, and you know, part of the signal issue is that it's storming here. There is big crashes of thunder and rain is pouring down. When Read and her defense team was on the courthouse steps saying thank you to her supporters, that it's really their help that they needed to bring this to the media's attention, they did a sort of a victory lap, even though this is a mistrial. And by all accounts, you have the Commonwealth that plans on pursuing another trial because the week of the 21st is a status conference for round 2. In front of the courthouse here, we're also seeing a lot of state police. They're growing in numbers. They have blocked off the roadway to any traffic in front of the courthouse. And we also have those Read supporters, diehard supporters. We've seen upwards of 400 in the early hours of the deliberation to about 100 or so that are here today, despite the fact that it's storming. And there was cheers that you could hear from inside the courthouse when those supporters of Karen Read learned of this mistrial.
There's really two sides in this case, Matt, as there is in every trial, but here it just seems to be different in the way that this community has splintered in who they support. You mentioned the people outside of the courthouse, and I'm thinking about how hard this has to be for the O'Keefe family. We saw the images of Paul O'Keefe, the brother of John O'Keefe, there listening to this mistrial declare, John O'Keefe's mother. You've been seeing them every single day there inside of the courthouse. This has been tough to come to a courthouse every single day. Are they close, or do they have to travel each day to be there?
Yeah, they're close by for the most part. They've been here each and every day in an undisclosed location, waiting along with the rest of us during this verdict watch. The O'Keefe family, they were comforting each other when they learned that it was a mistrial. Peggy O'Keefe, who's been there every day, even during that tough testimony, she broke down in tears when she learned that there was not a resolute verdict in all of this and that the family may have to go through this all again. Paul O'Keefe held his head down. His wife was comforting him, rubbing his back. As we just looked on, they didn't say anything. That room was completely silent. What we did hear was the cheers outside from the Read supporters.
And Matt, we want to take a moment now to go to our field producer, Tiffany Smith, who's there on the team with you, and she's interviewing some Karen Read supporters. So let's see if we can dip in and listen to that feed.
Will all of you be back?
Absolutely.
Yes.
We'll be back.
Absolutely.
So what do you have to say to, what would you say to Karen that you weren't able to say? Because we, you know, before this, we've been able to get really close to her. So what would you have said to her?
Well, like everyone standing around me, we all believe in her innocence.
And what we've been yelling, I love you, we love you, we love you, Karen. Stay strong, Karen. This is, yeah, all that. She's heard it. Well, keep saying it.
She's a very strong woman, very, very strong woman.
Why do you think that?
She's been dealing with, what, three years now? It's crazy.
She's got her own medical issues.
All she did was drop her boyfriend off at a party, and then this is what happened. It's all she's guilty of, is dropping him off at an after-hours party.
So what do you think happened to Jonathan?
It's not ours to decide. That's all speculation. But we know what didn't happen to him.
Exactly.
He didn't get hit by a car.
Exactly.
And what do you have
The forensic evidence shows he did not get hit by a car. The car doesn't have dog bite teeth. He has no injuries consistent with being hit by a car. You heard the state medical examiner say that. And then you bring in the two ARCA experts. They clearly showed the physics and the math and the science behind it. You heard the two physicians who said those are dog bites. Cars don't produce dog bites. You get hit by a car, you will be bruised. At the very least, fractures more than likely. I mean, there was no physical evidence that showed that he was hit by a car. So.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
Do you guys think you'll continue to come out here if this goes to a retrial? Like, 100%. You guys will come out every day. I mean, this has been a
100%.
long 2-3 months for everyone.
So we'd stop now? I mean, you don't stop till it's done.
We will always come out.
Yeah, always.
We started coming out last summer every week to go to every pre-trial. We're going to keep coming out every week.
Absolutely.
If we have to go to this.
I mean, it's pointless to not. She's innocent. This is wrong.
All right, that audio is breaking up. But Matt, this is a sentiment that you've heard over and over again, this determination from those who are supporting Karen Read. What do you think happens next in this case based on what you've seen there inside of the courtroom?
Well, you know, the attorneys had to give their calendar and their schedule. It looks like the week of the 21st, there's going to be a status check. So Karen Read will be required to be there for that. And we'll see how soon that this gets pushed to a round 2. Second trial by the Commonwealth. But, you know, you have these supporters that have been here through freezing temperatures, through a heat wave, standing here for the last 12, 13 weeks here during this trial process. And they say that they'll be here. They were planning on being here for any appeal if necessary, but now they say that they'll be here for a second trial.
And we will see and hear, as you mentioned, from the prosecution if they are going to bring these charges. Matt, I'm going to let you go now, but I know we'll likely be hearing from you as we continue to get that reaction there in front of the courthouse in Dedham, Massachusetts. But let's bring in our guest for this hour, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Marie Pereira. Marie, a mistrial there in Massachusetts. It's not the answer that really anyone wants. The defense wants an acquittal. The prosecution wants a conviction. The jury wants to finish out their service in a way that brings some finality to a case, but that's just not what happened today there in Norfolk County. Your thoughts on us learning that there's not one holdout. There was a split, and perhaps the judge will share with a party that will be able to share with us what the number of the split is. Were you surprised that it wasn't just one person there on one side or the other?
No, I'm not surprised. And I knew it would be probably maybe half and half. And that's why they sent out that very thoughtful message that the views are so divergent, it's nearly impossible for them to come to some sort of unanimous conclusion and a verdict here. I am not surprised. And you know who we can blame for this? Those trifling Boston police officers who were drunk and misogynistic, tunnel visioned, and they messed up that investigation. And Karen Read's team did a good job at proving reasonable doubt. There is no way that a fair-minded juror could come up with any unanimity in this situation because it's just not there. The state did not prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt was all over this situation. Thank you to the cops who didn't do their jobs. They were shady, getting rid of telephones, getting rid of dogs, selling their homes, acting like they didn't know. Oh, I don't know if nobody told me to preserve it. The shadiness was so shady that it it just did everything to this case. They did that. The police officers did that.
I'm going to bring in Josh Schiffer, standing by as well, criminal defense attorney. Josh, I want to speak to you from the defense standpoint. If there is a retrial, what do they do different to get a full acquittal next time, in your opinion?
Oh, well, the impeachment from the prior testimony that we all just watched for weeks and weeks and weeks. Those transcripts are in the process of getting printed right now, and people are going to pour over them, creating miles and miles of questions that call into legitimate question the veracity, the truthfulness, the effectiveness in what they actually observed of the witnesses from the state specifically, like Maria's talking about. This is a classic case of bad input means a bad product. And the product the Commonwealth was looking for through Adam Lally was a conviction, but it wasn't going to happen given the things that Marie was talking about, given the things that we all watched. Indefensible and questionable investigation issues with the police from the absolute start. This wasn't treated like the serious case it deserved. I don't know exactly what the mentality was of the people involved during this investigation, but it wasn't on doing top shelf police work like the people of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts deserve. Defense-wise, this case is a win, or the hung is a win for the defense. Unlike in a lot of cases where a hanging jury sharpens the state, my belief is in this case, the defense has a far better case moving forward if the Commonwealth wants to go forward on the top charges like they did this time. What we're all waiting for is to find out how the state reconsiders the stinging loss.
Former prosecutor Marie Pereira, let me ask you what the state should do differently. If they go forward with a retrial, do they try and get a change of venue? Is that an option?
I don't think it's an option. And there's nothing that they can do differently because, like Josh said, garbage in, garbage out. And there's nothing that they can do to change the facts of this case because the Boston police officers messed it up from the beginning. And there's nothing that the prosecutors can do to present it in a different light. All of it came out. And Alan Jackson, the defense team, they did a great job, especially with Proctor. They went after him like a surgical proctologist team when they cross-examined him.
You're supposed to have on your prosecution hat. You're giving me the defense. Is there anything that the state can do better? The Commonwealth in this case, should they shorten it? I mean, there's got to be something after 30 days of trial that they could learn to do differently this second time around.
There is nothing that they can do differently because it is what it is. They messed it up. The police messed it up from day one. And I feel so bad for John O'Keefe's family. There's nothing that they can do. Like Josh says, garbage in, garbage out. You can't undo the garbage. I don't even know what the word is, but it was trash in, trash out, nothing. Except maybe try to give her a deal that she can't, deny. And I don't even think they do that because she's claiming innocence, period. So there's no plea here. The loser is that poor man's family. There might have been a case, but the reasonable doubt was just not there. Thanks to the police officers who messed it up for whatever reason. They lied.
Josh is raising his hand. He might can assist.
I'm not going to go as far as my dear friend Marie with it. The state is just hosed and destroyed and can't come back. They can. Remember the immense power the state has to present the charges they want. They have the indictment. Doesn't mean they have to go for top charges. They can reduce. They can re-strategize. They can figure out a pathway with what the facts that are uncontroverted, the best facts the state have. They can present the case that matches those facts. I don't think at this point it matches the top charges. And a lot of discussions happened during the last 2, 3, 4, 6 months that this is a case that was overcharged more than anything else. And a lower charge, first of all, may be easier to carry that burden in front of a jury. But second of all, if you get to the right plea negotiation, this trial was costly, dangerous, huge exposure for Karen Reed. If you turn around and give her an opportunity to put all this behind her at the appropriate exchange rate, that may be something she's really interested. I think I said it earlier, disorderly conduct for time served has garbage disposal a lot of big charges, and that's something that could happen here.
All right, we are going to continue. Go ahead, Marie.
I think the best they can get is maybe get her for a DWI, the 9 drinks, and that's it. And then in that case, everybody who was in that bar should catch a DWI too, because even the witnesses, one of the police officers said I had 6 drinks and then I got in the car and drove over there. Everybody was drunk. Maybe a drunk driving, that's all she would plead to.
We will see what happens. We'll, of course, bring you the very latest. Our Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson is on the ground now. We'll get a live update from him later on in the show. But for now, we're going to get to that break and talk more on the other side about what happens next after the judge has declared a mistrial in the case against Karen Reed.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a hung jury leads to a mistrial in the case against Karen Reed. We're looking at what caused this jury to be so divided and what's next for Karen Reed.
Closing Arguments tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
It's a long one.
Judge Cannone, despite our rigorous efforts, we continue to find ourselves at an impasse. Our perspectives on the evidence are starkly divided. Some members of the jury firmly believe that the evidence surpasses the burden of proof, establishing the elements of the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Conversely, others find the evidence fails to meet this standard and does not sufficiently establish the necessary elements of the charges. The deep division is not due to a lack of effort or diligence, but rather a sincere adherence to our individual principles and moral convictions. To continue to deliberate would be futile and only serve to force us to compromise these deeply held beliefs. I'm not going to do that to you folks. Your service is complete. I'm declaring a mistrial in this case. I'll be in to see you privately in a few minutes. So thank you so much for your service.
After a jury called themselves deeply divided, this jury was then deemed hung. There's a mistrial in the Karen Reed trial. After 31 days of evidence and testimony, after 8 weeks passed for that trial, 5 days of deliberation, 26 hours of deliberation over those 5 days, they said that they could not reach an agreement. Our Matt Johnson is there on the ground, still with us, and joins us live from the Norfolk County Massachusetts courthouse. Matt, where so much has happened today. There's been so much movement outside and inside of the courthouse. That deep division that this jury talked about in 2 letters, does that mirror what you've seen on the ground there in the community?
It certainly has, and after 74 witnesses in 10 weeks, that includes 9 weeks of testimony, a mistrial has been declared by Judge Cannone, and she said that she is thankful for the service of the 6 men, 6 women that could not come to a resolute solution or decision as to those charges. Moments ago, we saw the O'Keefe family, the victim's family in all of this, walking down the courthouse steps. The media was pushed back. They made no comment as they were escorted by state troopers to their cars. Before that, we saw this defendant, Karen Reed, and her attorneys address the media, saying thank you to their supporters and also that their client is innocent. Karen Reed waived. She did not address the supporters or the media out front. Her supporters, however, have been cheering, and you could hear them in the courtroom as soon as they learned that the judge declared a mistrial in this case. Right now, we understand that this jury and also the 2 alternates are in chambers with the judge as she addresses them and thanks them for their service and asks them questions. That is the mood out here on a very stormy day that has these ramifications of possibly a second trial and a date of a status hearing at the end of the month. Julia?
Yeah, status hearing. We'll be very eager to see what happens. Does a trial date get set? Does the judge ask the prosecution if they're even going to move forward with charges? And what's that look like? Is she going to ask these parties to get together and try to come to some kind of a deal? Your thoughts on the supporters outside of the courthouse, how they are deeming a mistrial? It's not the answer really anyone wants because people want a conclusion, but what was your feeling throughout these last 5 days when they perhaps were thinking this would be a mistrial?
Right, these supporters that have stuck with Karen Read since the charges first became public knowledge in this community, it's really divided this community, and that's what many of the supporters continue to share with me and tell me in their own personal stories. Even their family members, they can't talk about the case with them. But they have viewed this from the early days of the deliberations. Last Tuesday, they were disappointed that it wasn't the resolute, not guilty that they were hoping for right away. They were really expecting a quick verdict. As we know, 5 days later, working days, today declared a mistrial. They cheered, and they say that that's still a win for someone that they believe to the core in the narrative that she is framed in a corruption case here. And they say that they're going to stick with her for a second trial if need be.
So many people have not only said that they want to see Karen Read freed, but also justice for John O'Keefe. Matt, you've been great in sharing with us, even though the family can't speak. They wanted to let this trial play out, but we got to hear about John O'Keefe, this officer, son, brother, and father, through the testimony in the trial. Let's go back to some of those moments during this case against Karen Read, where John O'Keefe became the sender.
Did you have any siblings?
2, yes. My sister Kristen, and brother John. They all called him Johnny, especially if you're a family.
And what did Johnny do for work?
Boston Police.
How long was he a member of the Boston Police?
16 years.
When was it about that he started with the sex offender registry?
So after my sister had passed away in 2013, her husband passed away 2 months after that. My brother he took on responsibility of raising our niece and nephew. And so the Boston Police, to ensure that he was safe and protected, moved him to that unit in 2014.
Paul and Johnny went out to lunch one day, and we had kind of assumed because Johnny was out on, the streets doing his job like that Paul and I would take the kids, and Johnny said he was going to do it.
We met through mutual friends, and then our kids became very friendly.
He was our friend. He was really good to me and my kids.
We were close. We did a lot of stuff together, pick up the kids, drop the kids off. We coordinated a lot of stuff together.
Him and my husband would always do the games. The kids used to call them my two dads. It was like they had a lot of fun together.
He was my friend. I love John. He was an amazing guy.
I've known him since high school. He was one of my closest friends.
So my daughter was very good friends with his niece. And so, she would be over all the time, and JJ would come over with and pick her up, and he would come in and talk to us and hang out.
I met John in May of 2013. I met him at a bar in South Boston he was with Pat Rogers at the time. Post meeting John, I started dating Pat, and my son's father is Pat Rogers. In July of 2013, I became pregnant, and in November of 2013, Pat committed suicide. Immediately following that, John never really left my side, as a support system.
He was a very, very dear family friend. He was very close to my sister, subsequently became very close to me and my family as a result. And he was my nephew's godfather. He was somebody who was there for my sister during her darkest times, so I really respected him for that. But yeah, he was a big brother and a family friend.
My last communication with him was on a group text exchange. He was excited because our niece had gotten accepted to Bishop Fee in high school. So he was happy, proud dad moment. And then, national math scores came back, and he scored extremely high. So he was extremely proud of that day as well.
Matt Johnson, you have been learning more about John O'Keefe than any of us. What stands out to you about the victim in this case and how both sides have talked about him?
Yeah, not only the nature of how he died in that tragic way, that we still don't have an answer from a jury as to how he died. And then this trial and building up to this case with Karen Reed and the allegations of corruption and cover-up. But before that, this is a Boston police officer that was well known in this community for taking in his niece and nephew and adopting them and raising them on his own as a single man. He was very well known. And his family were here each and every day for him, representing him. And they're not speaking to the media just yet. They asked for silence during this trial and this lengthy process that was quite painful at times. But they wore bracelets in solidarity, always on our minds. And they also wore a police bracelet next to that. The family members showed those to me one day after court. They really appreciate the public that was really behind them and praying for them. They say thank you. And even though they're not speaking to the media today, I'm sure they're still thankful for any support by people watching at home.
Matt Johnson, excellent reporting there for these 8 weeks plus of trial. We'll let you go for now. Let's bring in criminal defense attorney Marie Pereira and Josh Schiffer to talk more about this case, where we go from here. We talked about what the prosecution may do next, the options that the prosecution has. Do you think when you have a case where there's an officer who was killed, and Josh, I want to start with you, that they have to move forward with trying this again, because letting it go or declining to continue to push these charges, how that will look? Do you think that plays into their analysis?
Absolutely. And I'm not in the crowd of people that thinks, oh, this is just done. State's going to give up. They couldn't. No, there's a dead officer. There has been an enormous amount of effort put forward to solve this case. The state put forward the best case they had and made a reach. And just because it's a hung jury doesn't mean that the state has to stop. The state has the obligation to keep going and fulfill its mandate to prosecute the violations of the law. And I don't believe for 1 second that the Commonwealth is just going to pack up and go home and never touch this again. There's too much there. Now, how that rolls out, man, that ain't my job. I've not run for office for a reason. I don't want to make those kinds of decisions. Adam Lawley's going to have to go back and have some long talks with the rest of the prosecuting community about what they can do given the situation they find themselves in, because I don't think a retrial on the top charges is going to happen, and we all have to wait for the results of the various discussed investigations that are all going on in the background to come out. So not done, but there's no walk away by the Commonwealth.
No, I do want to talk about that federal investigation, but I want to bring our viewers up to date on some breaking news we just received about the Commonwealth. They put out a statement in this case, and it reads that this mistrial has been declared in the Karen Reed case, that the status conference is dated July 22nd, and that they intend to retry the case. They do thank the O'Keefe family for their commitment and dedication to this long process. They maintain sight of the true core of this case to find justice for John O'Keefe. But the main line that everyone has been waiting to hear from them on is that last line. The Commonwealth intends to retry the case. Marie Pereira, your thoughts?
I'm not surprised, and I agree with Josh wholeheartedly that they were not going to walk away from this. Someone died. Not only was he a police officer, he was a family man. He had the responsibility of taking care of his sister's children. People loved him, and we still don't know what happened to him. They deserve to do it over again. Maybe this time the Commonwealth can come out with some better evidence, other witnesses. It is a challenge because a lot of what happened can't be undone. What happened to create the reasonable doubt? All the evidence destruction, intentionally or unintentionally, by seasoned officers, the delayed investigation, the bite marks that just don't look like a motor vehicle ran him over. They can't undo the bad facts, so they're going to have to sit down and strategize. And I think John O'Keefe's family is going to be a part of that, to figure out, you know, what is the next step. Yes, we're going to retry, but what do you think we did wrong? I think even input from his family is going to be necessary here. It's an uphill battle. They're going to go at it again, but the result may be the same, because trash in and trash out, they cannot sanitize the dirt that was put on this case by these police officers. And they should feel guilty about it, because if they didn't do all of what they did, all the looking like it's a cover-up, maybe the jurors could have come up with a verdict. They did that. They should hold that.
And we still have the federal investigation into all of that. That's looking at how the case was handled, maybe looking at some of these departments. We don't know when that's going to come out. But Josh Schiffer, just real quick before we have to go to break, if you're the prosecution, do you want to get a trial in before that report comes out, or do you wait until after?
Well, remember, trials are not an exercise in sharing all the information. Courts exclude information left, right, and center. And as parts of the media, we don't know what's been excluded necessarily. I'll be interested to see what the full and fulsome review of all the state's evidence looks like when they decide how they're going to bring the case back to trial.
All right, we will leave it there. Thank you all for that analysis, not only today, but throughout this trial.